So, good afternoon to you, Kevin.
Good afternoon to you as well, my friend.
So, we're absolutely enthralled to have you with us today. So, I guess the first thing I'd kind of like to talk about is your arrival into the comic book industry. Prior to the success of the Turtles, you were a lobster cook, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, since, I started drawing at a very young age and, was always writing, since the discovery of my hero, Jack Kirby, I was always writing and drawing my own comic stories and had, self-published a few, mini comics and done some work for, some other mini comic artists, a few, odds and ends here and there, and always had cooking jobs because I could eat at work and still have money left over to buy art supplies. So, by the time, I was working in, growing up in Maine, Memorial Day to Labor Day is where you try to make enough money to survive the winter. And with all the tourists coming in, cooking lobsters is one way to do it. And I cooked a lot of those guys.
So, you're kind of my Jack Kirby. So, I've always found your success to be a solid testimony to the old adage, anything's possible if you set your mind to it. And your work's certainly been an inspiration to me and has been one of the key motivators to the continuance of my own personal drive towards success as an artist. What would you say to others that dream of achieving what you've achieved?
Well, that's what's I'm finding so interesting these days, especially, with 30 years down the road, we've been, we got into this field, and, I use this phrase a lot. I always say, standing on the shoulders of giants. It was, guys like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko and Wally Wood and Frazetta and people like that inspired us to draw, inspired me to draw from a young age. And so, when I met those guys, when we first got into the business, I was, pretty much the same way fans come up to me these days, which is astonishing to me, and I feel unworthy, so to speak, because I'd go up to Kirby and go like, man, you're the reason I'm in comics. You're the reason I wanted to start drawing and writing and drawing my own stories and doing that stuff. And he was so cool about it. He just, you could tell that the guy just absolutely loved what he did. He was so proud of what he did. He, made a living and provided for his family and just enjoyed himself as well. And so, that's what inspired me. And now that, 30 years later, it's like kind of, fans coming up that have started drawing because of what they've seen the work that Peter and I did in the Turtles. It's beyond flattering, and it's humbling, and it's pretty awesome.
How are things with the IDW series right now?
Beyond fantastic. I tell you that when I was good friends with Ted Adams from the earliest days in comics. We've known each other for probably at least 20 years, and I've just watched what IDW's been able to do and grow to when they started out in the business and what they set out to do. And when Ted got the license to do the new Turtles from Nickelodeon, he called me up and said, "Hey, we have the license for the Turtles. You interested in doing some covers, or would you be interested in just hearing what we're doing, what would like to do the series, and with the series, throw your 2 cents in?" And so I was living in LA at the time, so I drove down and got to meet Tom Waltz, who's the head writer. And is just, to me, is just an absolute genius. He just, like us, grew up as a fan of comic books. Always wanted to do that. Write his own stories, and always did it. And he was able to look at the entire Turtle universe from the original black and white comic books to the animated series to the old movies and some of that. He had picked the favorite things that he liked in each of those and sort of put them all into a blender and came up with this new foundation to build a new Turtle universe, the IDW Turtle universe, and a place to tell some really fun stories, and at the same time allow to go back into some of those old animated shows and pull out characters like the neutrinos that we brought in as, changed them up as freedom fighters, and bringing Krang in and some of the other different mutants and stuff. And I just fell in love with what he had come up with for a concept. And, so I used to go down and do brainstorming sessions and still do on a regular basis. And I can't believe next month it'll be officially 3 years since I started working back on the Turtle series for IDW.
Oh, yeah.
Started with the layouts on the first 4 issues, and I've been doing covers. I just finished cover 37 this week. I just finished last week my second Turtles annual, which is a 48-page special issue where I was able to bring back Renat, one of the original Turtle characters from Turtles #8, the original black and white series, and 2012 I did a 60-page annual, and I've done some fill-in issues. And literally finding out, when I came back in and started drawing the Turtles again, it was, remembering how much I missed drawing them, how much I missed telling Turtle stories, and how much I love drawing comics again as a sole profession, because, I've gone into publishing this and building businesses and museums and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Now it's, my sole goal in life is just to go back to what got me into this business in the first place, which is writing and drawing and telling stories.
Well, that's great. So I guess one of the biggest subjects on Turtle fan minds right now is the new movie that's coming out next month. Mm-hmm. So would you like to talk about your involvement with that?
Sure. It's what's cool about the new movie is, this goes back to when Peter and I did the original animated series. The first comments that we heard from anybody when we did the first animated series was, oh my God, what have you done to our turtles? You're doing this, you're selling out, you've changed them, and you've changed the mask, and you've done this and that. Oh, it's going to be horrible, and I can't believe you guys did this. But, the whole world of fans that discovered them afterwards, they embraced them, and even some of the harder sell people, loved the movies, loved the cartoon show, and that's where we reached the biggest audience that we had. And then you look back at, the 2000 and, the Fox Kids 2000 series, it was a different style of the Turtles. You look at, for what we did with the IDW comic, which was, we took some pretty drastic steps. I mean, having April name the Turtles, having, April go back into the lab like she did in issue 2, but she named the Turtles, and Splinter being a lab test rat as opposed to just a random rat in the sewer, and Raphael being separated out from the group. They first fell into the sewer, and the introduction to that, ultimately the whole reincarnation aspect where, that we brought into the whole series. It was, some pretty dramatic changes, and, I really expected a bigger backlash. And there were a few hardcore fans that sort of, were uncomfortable with it at first, but have since, grown to love to see the spirit of how we did the stories and what we're doing with them, and have embraced it. When Nickelodeon started working on the new animated series, it was the same thing. We got comment after comment with, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing them CGI. They look stiff. They look cardboard. This will never work. I can't believe you ruined my Turtles. And now it's like, a #1 rated show. And even the fans that were tough sell initially said, well, it's actually really funny, and it's really well done, and the martial arts is great. So I sort of apply that to what we've been doing with the new Turtle movie. And when it started into development as a live-action series 4 years ago, I started working with the original producers, Scott Mednick and Galen Walker. They brought me in to consult and work on a script and develop some of the visual. I did, I think, about 100 drawings for the initial pitch to what Paramount was developing. And then when Michael Bay took point as producer and Jonathan Liebsman came in as director, Liebsman called me right away and basically said, look, I want you to come in and I want you to tell me everything I need to know and everything I don't know and everything I should know about the Turtles. And we spent a bunch of time together, talking about all things Turtles. When they brought the writers in, Andre Nemec and Josh Applebaum, I went and sat with them, I think 3 or 4 different times, just talking about what they wanted to do and, what they wanted to accomplish with the script. And even did, Paramount hired me to do concept sketches and some of the developments of the movie. From what I've seen, the script, what I've seen in the movie, including I got to do a cameo in it, I think the fans are going to come out and once they see the characters moving, acting, interacting, I think that they'll get a big kick out of it, and I think they'll get past the look, which used to be the biggest problem. But the rest of the heart and the soul is there. The story's there, the visuals are there, the action's going to be, incredibly intense and over the top. And I think that, I almost am glad in one way that they're going in with slightly lower expectations. And I hope we'll blow them away when they see what everybody's been able to do with it. So I'm looking forward to the reaction. I think it's going to be a lot more positive than people think right now.
Well, very cool. I'm looking forward to seeing movie star Kevin.
we'll see. Luckily, they don't let me speak any lines. I just have a cool cameo, and that's all. I'll leave it at that.
Wasn't there a cameo that you were supposed to appear in the original film? That
it's in there. Yeah, it's in there. It's just like it's a black blob in the background. You can't see. It was kind of funny because it was, in the first one there was a scene where it was a setup for the garbage truck that they end up crushing Shredder in, as two turtles are exchanging dialogue and fighting, and then behind the two turtles is Leonardo, a third turtle, fighting like 15-foot guys, and then about 2 blocks down the street, this garbage truck sort of pulls into view, and this character is supposed to walk out, carry 2 garbage bags, looks down the street, sees what's happening, and turns and runs back down the street. That's my cameo.
Well, now we'll get to see Kevin in HD. So
maybe if it's in HD and you really zoom in on it, you might see it. But otherwise, it's like I told everybody about it, and it was great because then the movie got over. They said, "Well, where was it?" And I was like, "Well, it was that little black blob that sort of walked out and back." That's all you saw.
So we'll see it crystal clear in the new movie, though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Freeze frame, close up. Dramatic slow motion. Squinting eyes. I don't know. I'm making it up.
Well, I have you here to kind of slightly go off the topic of Turtles, because I'm sure any true Kevin Eastman fan knows that you took over heavy metal and what my stepson calls the olden days, the 1990s.
Yes, no, that was quite a fantastic thing. I tell the story where my discovery of heavy metal led me down a path that to self-publishing and creating the Turtles, owning the Turtles, profiting from the Turtles, which gave me enough money to buy heavy metal. Because it was sort of, as around the time I was kind of growing out of just Comics Code approved comic books, getting a little juvenile. I discovered Heavy Metal magazine, which that introduced you to guys like Richard Corbin and Ron Bodie and other American artists, Bernie Wrightson and stuff, but also all the amazing European artists. It just inspired me that, like, man, you can do anything you want with comics, tell any kind of story you want, but more importantly, discovering guys like Richard Corbin led me to underground comics and self-publishing. And so by the time, we discovered Dave Sim and guys like that, what the new wave of underground publishers were doing, when Pete and I came up with the Turtles, it was like, we're just going to self-publish it. We're not going to, come, if it sells one copy or more than one copy, then it doesn't matter. We're going to do it ourselves.
Right.
And that's, and so, we're pretty well aware of guys like Jack Kirby that lost the rights to the characters and never profited from the characters and stuff. So we knew how special it was that we got to have ownership and control and say over what was to be done or not done with our characters. So it was pretty cool. And I love heavy metals. I still pick out all the material for every issue, and it doesn't feel like a job, to be honest. It's looking at awesome art and putting it into a magazine and putting it out there for our fans.
Oh yeah, doing it yourself's the way to do it sometimes, right?
Yeah, man. It's just that and a lot of shit luck sometimes.
Let's see. I guess I'll just ask you about one more thing. Well, first of all, when I was a kid, when I was collecting the Turtles toys, the Toxic Crusaders toys came out around the same time. Mm-hmm. And I would always place my Toxic Crusaders with my Ninja Turtles, so I always had like a trauma to Turtles connection, and then lo and behold, years later, you ended up in a couple of trauma movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that was some fun stuff. Always been a big supporter of them, and it was sort of like one of the last big independents out there, and trying new things and different things, and I just think it's I think some of the people that started out there have gone on to real Hollywood stars, if you will. I think it was Peter Gunn. I think we end up doing like Night at the Museum, and he's written a bunch of it's a great place to train and learn and how to do that stuff. And, much like we do with comic books, it's like we end up getting paid to do to learn how to Jonathan Demme, even Coppola did his first movie for Corman. You got to start somewhere, and if you can make it through that, then God bless you.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to personally thank you for doing this interview with us, and it's a big day for me, especially because I would regard this as probably the biggest day of my life, next to being married to my wife. So.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Well, it's like, sorry we didn't get to spend more time together down in North Carolina.
Well,
Heroes Con. That was a great show, and I think that we, like I said, my wife and I were continually blown away with the amount of people that are showing up for these events, and it's great to have the chance to spend, even if it's a few minutes with each fan, just to say hi and hello and sign something. And I noticed they both commented on the fact that it seemed like a lot of people that would bring stuff to the show to get signed were personal items that they had in their collection from the earliest days, old beat-up comic books, which I call them, well-loved, or old video games or that kind of stuff. So it was cool to see that. And then, most of the rest of the people had the new IDW books and talked about how much they've been really enjoying the new series. So
it's generations and generations at this point. So.
I'll be, another 20 years to be rolling me out in a wheelchair in my Depends and stuff, and I'll be like, hey, everybody.
And we'll all thank you for that, because it's something you don't necessarily have to do.
Yeah,
so.
I love it. It's inspiring at the very core. It's very, very inspiring and honoring and humbling and all that. It's pretty cool.